Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Shane Jenkins, and this is the first episode of Chestnut Checkers. A lot of y'all don't know me, but I am a recently pardoned January the 6th defendant. I did 1,418 days in the federal prison system and in the DC jail. Today, I have a couple of special guests, very close friends of mine, Robert Morss and Kelly Meggs, who I did many, many days with in jail and got to know very, very well. And so we're just going to bring them in. They have a lot to talk about. I'm sure we're going to have some laughs, and I just want to welcome y'all into our world and thank you for watching. What's up, Rob? What's up, Meggs?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
What's going on, man?
Y'all doing all right?
Hey, thanks for having
Yeah.
us, man. What an honor to be a part of your production. This is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of threw it all together last second, so there may be some bumps in the road, but thank you
I
guys
dig the name too, Chestnut Checkers.
that harkens back to a less than stellar event in the DC Gulag. We may go into that another time. I think Meg's missed out on that, but yeah,
Yeah,
if
I
you guys
wasn't
would
there
just,
for that, but it's funny because we actually use that in the book.
okay.
Yeah.
That's where it all came from. So it's funny.
Yeah, if you guys want to each introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about who you are, what your backgrounds are, and stuff like that. I would love to
Age
hear that.
before beauty, Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Kelly Meggs. January 6th defendant. Obviously, I am the only one on this podcast that is not pardoned. My sentence was commuted. I guess we'll figure out why eventually, but I have my own ideas. I think Trump's going to use our indictment to unwind the entire narrative. I am a husband, father, and grandfather living down in Florida and enjoying life right now and just being out. So the struggle's real. We're all fighting to get back through it, but we'll get there. So at least we're out here doing it, not inside.
That's right. Amen.
Huge relief.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Cool. Well, my name is Robert Abraham Morse. I left home, Reno, Nevada, at the age of 17 to become an airborne ranger and deployed to Afghanistan 3 times. Used my GI Bill to go to Penn State, got my degree in secondary education, and I graduated on December 19th, 2020. 2 weeks later, I was at the Capitol on January 6th. So I had a very brief career as a high school history teacher, and come to find out that actually came in handy while I was locked up, ironically enough. But 6 months after I was at the Capitol, I got arrested on the last day of school for January 6th. I was down for 3.5 years. This is, that's where I met you gentlemen. And it was the best of times and it was the worst of times for sure. But as of right now, I am currently in a legal battle to try to get my teaching certificate back. The Department of Education in Pennsylvania legally removed that from me while I was incarcerated. And so on May 12th, we have a hearing to see whether or not something that I fought a war for and then went to Penn State to earn. And then now that I'm pardoned, I should definitely have returned to me if I can get it back to teach. So that's kind of like the big fish that I'm trying to fry as of right now. And then, we're all trying to reassemble our lives. And that's a struggle. And it's interesting how many challenges you face in the outside world that you didn't expect to face as we dreamt of the outside world while we were incarcerated. It hasn't been easy.
Right. No, I tell people we were given our freedom back, but we haven't been given these big paychecks and any of our form of our life redeemed, whether it was our jobs. And like you said, you went and fought in the war to get the GI Bill and then went to college and got your teacher's degree, and they are refusing in Pennsylvania. And I'm sure it's those Marxist teachers, whatever it is, teachers unions or whatever it is, keeping you from being able to do that. So that's all. So neither one of you guys had ever been in any kind of criminal trouble prior to. Now, Meggs, maybe you had whatever, some other stuff, but not anything serious of note, right?
No, I had nothing, man. I was clean as a whistle. I got arrested one time. I did get arrested one time at a Leonard Skinner concert, but they let me go. So it was on my record. I had to do community service for they called it a public affray.
Affray.
That's what we should have been charged with on January 6th.
It's exactly what it should have been. Yep. Should have been the same
That's
thing.
what
I
you
could have
should have
bought some
said,
dog
Kelly.
food and got off.
At January 6th, you should have said once more into the affray.
Yeah, exactly. No.
I get calls from guys all the time, and you guys are my friends, and just so the public knows, these guys are these guys are my brothers, my very close friends. I have probably, 15, 20 guys that I really call close. And then I have a small group inside of that. And these guys are both in that circle. But I get calls a lot from people saying that they're struggling. And it is they have been traumatized because unlike you guys, like I have been in and out of prison a lot of my life. And prior to Christ, like I was in a lot of trouble for a lot of really serious stuff. And so I kind of knew what to expect going in and kind of knew what to expect going out. But I'm going to be honest, I've had some really difficult days, and days that I question, like, do I really want to even be here if I'm going to feel like this mentally? And so we have been, our freedom has been restored, but there is a lot that has not been put back right. And I don't know if that's going to take years of just being used to being free. It hasn't even been 90 days yet. And so it's a lot to take in sometimes and to grasp. Like I wake up and think I'm going to be in a jail cell, and there's just a lot of different, I did like my last year in solitary confinement. And so it was just a lot, but
if you don't have that feeling, you haven't been in jail. That's the honest feeling. Man, I'm telling you.
Did I just
wake
sleep
up in
in
the middle of the night? You're like,
Yeah.
like, what's going on?
I'll tell you this. That's something very interesting. Is think about it, guys, and I know that you guys can totally relate. How many times were you in jail and you had a dream that you were free, and then you woke up and you're like, oh man, I wake up back in jail? Well, there's been a couple times where I've had like almost like a mental kind of like roller coaster where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I just dreaming again? And am I going to wake up in jail again? Am I going to wake up in prison again because this is one awesome dream? And I know that might sound a little psychotic, but for those of us that did do some serious time and then have to really, tap into the Lord's strength, that's a real concern where like you had to fight to maintain your mental every single day.
Well, wake up. You didn't want to wake up in your DC oranges, like
That is hilarious.
So it's like, oh man, I know you'd appreciate that.
I love that. Yeah,
he's got the hair in the back. So,
that is hilarious.
Yeah. But so you guys were, we were in DC. I don't know how long you were in DC, Rob, and then Kelly, you were probably there almost 2 years, right?
I was there about 2.5.
Okay. And then Rob, how long were you in DC?
So the first time that I was in the DC jail, I think I was there for about 5 months because I showed up in July, and that's where I met you guys. And then it was either late June or early July. And then after, what happened when they took my Lego shoes and I was assaulted during the strip search by Armstrong and Taylor, those officers, I was sent straight to Northern Neck, and that was in November. So the day after we met Marjorie Taylor Greene and we got to shake her hand and everything like that, that's when I got ripped.
That was the day after that? I didn't even realize that.
Well, she came in on a Thursday, and I think the very next day is when I was taken. That's how nuts this was. And so and that was something that was kind of rough too, man. I had been taken in Northern Neck. I was separated from you guys, and you guys were my brothers. And the only ones that knew what it was like to suffer the fate that we were suffering. And so I missed you guys terribly. I was in Northern Neck for 13 months. And 12 of those months I was a trustee. But from Northern Neck, they took us to Lewisburg. Well, I'm running around in Lewisburg doing what I can to, try to survive. And randomly one day I look over and Kelly Meggs walks through. And I'm not going to lie, I got teary-eyed seeing him again because it had been about 13 months in Northern Neck, but maybe 2 months in Lewisburg without him. So, maybe 15 months and seeing a brother again.
No, but I think I saw you. Didn't I see you one time down at the DC
in the dungeon.
At the courthouse?
In the dungeon, yes.
Yeah, we were down in the dungeon in the courthouse. I saw you for
and
I don't know.
Let me paint a picture for the general public who may not know. When we were arrested, and most of us were extradited to DC. From I'm from Texas, Rob is from Pennsylvania, Meggs is from Florida.
Which, time out, those are the top 3 producers of January 6ers, by the way. Texas, Florida, and Pennsylvania.
Florida's number 1.
Brother.
Florida's number 1, baby.
Yeah. And so, but they took us and flew us all on Con Air all across the nation, and we ended up in DC, but we had our own little isolated unit in the DC jail where it was just January 6 people. So we were uniquely positioned, for better or for worse. We were all together in the DC jail. So I imagine when you left, Rob, and went to Northern Neck, you were not just amongst January 6ers. You were probably thrown into general population. Like when I was at Northern Neck, they put me in a maximum pod where everybody's carrying knives and doing all that kind of stuff. And
Day one, I walked into Northern Neck, I watched someone get cut wide open by the TVs. I was like, wow, this is real jail. This is real jail.
Yeah. And so, you know, we got and Easter just passing. We got to sit and do Bible studies in the DC jail, and that was a way to get guys out of their cells. And so I really appreciated the time sitting down and reading the Word with you guys, and getting to know y'all and know your hearts. And so you guys linked up in Lewisburg, and then so fast forward a little bit, y'all ended up in Philadelphia, which is where kind of the book came to be, or
well, in Lewisburg, we ran into each other in Lewisburg, and Rob had kicked off the Bible study there, so we jumped back into that again with him.
I was trying to honor you, Shane. I was trying to honor you.
Yeah,
honoring him.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then we went back to DC again. It was really weird because they took me, Kenny, Stewart out to go back for our sentencing, and Rob was left behind. And then all of a sudden, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days later, here shows Rob up, you know. But when you come back into the DC jail, they put you in they put you down in the SHU, or, you know, the segregated housing unit, and you go down there for, was it 2 weeks or was it a week? I don't remember.
I think it was a week. It was about 2. Or
I think it was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you have to go down there for 2 weeks, and then you get to go back to the unit. So we ended up back on the unit I was on the unit for a day. And then I got sentenced, and they slapped me with a domestic terrorism enhancement. So Lander kid took me out and put me in the SHU again, and I was there for 2 months. Month and a half, whatever.
Waiting to do that, because I remember when y'all came back, because Rhodes was with y'all. I was there for that, I think.
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah.
When we came back in, you were one of the guys who was there. I didn't recognize. I mean, some of the guys were there, Dempsey and the little short dude. McHugh, yeah,
McGrew,
and
Doo-doo McGrew.
No, McGrew was gone.
Was he? Okay.
McGrew was gone.
Doo-doo.
I think a lot of people were gone, but there was a lot of people there, man. I had no clue who they were, dude.
Yeah,
that was like the second wave of January 6ers. We were in the first wave. There was a second wave.
I thought I was going to walk back into the unit, and it was going to be like the same old time. Man, I didn't recognize anybody. I'm like, who are these clowns? You know what I mean? So I'm like, these guys are Jan Sixers. These aren't the original guys. What the hell happened to them?
Well, I will say, I remember I was sharing last night with Tony from Audit the Vote about whenever they flew me, I got arrested March 5th, 2021, and I ended up in DC around like I want to say towards the end of April, but they put me in. So C2B was where everybody was at, and they put the guys in quarantine in C2A. And I'll never forget being in that cell and hearing every night at 9 o'clock, I would hear the guys singing the anthem, and we would go to the door and listen, and we would sing with them. And it was me, Julian Cater, and I can't remember. And Pete, was it Pete? Yeah, and Pete.
Yeah, because you guys came across,
Yeah, we were all over there together for 17 days in 17 days in quarantine.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget that, hearing the anthem, and that's a whole nother story. But so you guys went from Lewisburg back to DC, and then ended up leaving and going to Philly, and we're together there, or?
Yeah, so we both got hauled out on a Thursday, right, Kelly? Randomly, because normally they don't move you on days like that. But
it was an odd day.
It was an odd day, and I remember thinking, "Oh man, I'm getting moved to prison." Okay, you know, I'm every time you get moved, you get nervous because you never know what to expect. So I was a little nervous, and then going down to the processing area, which is on the first floor of the DC jail, and they got their little holding pens in there. I round the corner, and I'm like, Kelly Meggs, he's there. I'm about to hang out with him. You know, like, what are you doing? And we're starting to figure it out. And he's thinking, oh, I'm about to go down to Florida. I'm like, well, I'm probably going to go to either Fort Dix or Loretto. I don't know where I'm going to go, but why would we be going together? And the guard ended up telling us, oh, you guys are going to Philly. And me and Kelly both looked at each other like, why? You know, like
For what?
Yeah, why the hell are we going to Philadelphia? And it was weird because I went down there early, man, because they take the people in the shoe because I was downstairs. I hadn't seen anybody I hadn't seen nobody other than they took Pete out 3 weeks before. They took Stewart out the week before. So now I'm the only one down in the hole that's a Jan Sixer. And they came and got me that morning. They came at night and they're like, temperature check. And I'm like, what? I'm like, it's freaking midnight. Well, fortunately, when we had the tablets, I could call my wife right then.
Oh.
So I was able to call. They let me keep my tablet in the shoe since it wasn't disciplinary reason. It was just that I got sentenced and segregated, whatever. So I could make all the phone calls I wanted. So I called my wife and I'm like, look, I'm gone. I'm moving. And she's like, oh, thank God. Because I've been down there. I was in there for almost 7 weeks in the shoe. And dude, they have the craziest stories about prisons. You hear about rats and roaches and all these things. Bro, I was on the second level of the shoe, and we had a big ass snake in there. Dude, they were freaking out. So everybody's in their own cell, right? You're separated. You're not with anybody, right? And there's some. I mean, let me tell you something. If you don't sleep from like 4 a.m. until noon, you ain't sleeping. Because it's just so loud. They're banging, they're rapping, they're doing all their stuff all the time. So it's crazy, right? But during the day, it usually is pretty quiet. It's mellow. And then really, you're in your cell. You only come out every other day for a shower. So otherwise, you're locked in, right? So we all of a sudden everybody starts screaming and I'm like, what in the hell is going on in the middle of the day, right? So I get over the glass, I'm like everybody else, I'm looking through the glass, what's up, what's going on, right? and remember who was the one officer? He was a lieutenant. He was cool. Gosh, I can't remember him. Good guy. He used to come in all the time. I wish I could remember his name. One of the good ones. There's not many of them, but the ones that were good.
You're not talking about Abdullah, are you?
No.
He was a regular CO.
Yeah, regular CO, but this guy was a lieutenant. He used to come on the unit all the time. Remember when we were in no, it wasn't Shoemake. After him.
Okay. Yeah,
the last one we had.
Munoz?
No, wasn't Munoz. Munoz was cool too, but this was I think he might have been sergeant. Maybe he wasn't a lieutenant. Maybe he was just below the lieutenant. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So everybody's screaming, and you know how they have all the African guards, right? So we got a couple guys across the way that are a little mental, right? And he's screaming, "You Africans brought in these black bombers. They're going to kill us. These black bombers are going to kill us." I am laughing my ass off. Dude, I am dying. I am like, you got to be kidding me. He's banging on the door. These black Africans are trying to kill us. I am laughing my ass off, man. So finally that Sarge comes down and grabs it and shuffles it into a big garbage can, and they took it out of there. But first time I ever saw a snake in prison, last time I ever saw a snake in prison. In the building on the second floor. I'm like, how the hell did this thing get here? You know what I mean? It was crazy.
Wild.
Well,
so then finally they come and get me out, and I go downstairs and they put me in the holding tank, right? And they're pulling people out of everywhere, right? And I'm down there and I'm watching them all come into the room, and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna suck. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's just me. I'm going. I ain't seen nobody in.
You're the only white guy.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there by myself, and like I'm looking, and all of a sudden I see Rob, and I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, Rob! I start banging on the damn, and the COs are like, oh yeah, you guys can go in together. You guys are both J6.
Yeah,
that's
you're
cool.
both
they
domestic
knew who
terrorists.
we were, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the crazy thing that happened to me as far as like the DC jail adventure goes, when we first showed up to the DC jail, the inmates hated us, the guards hated us. I mean, we were public enemy number one.
Absolutely.
And we got the wrath because they didn't understand that they thought that we came to their backyard to just mess their stuff up for for giggles, and that wasn't the case at all. But after they got to know us, after we exposed what was happening in that jail, and after we were actually advocating for everybody, regardless of skin color, that culture started to shift in our direction. And so when I came back to the DC jail the second time to get sentenced, I'm in one of the holding cells, and I'm there by myself, and there's a group of the DC boys going by, and they holler at me. They go, "Hey, you a J6er?" And immediately, my guard's going up. And I'm thinking, oh
Yeah.
man, here we go. They wasted no time, And granted, this is in 2023, so 2 years have gone by since the day. So like, you a J6er? And I look at them. I'm like, yeah, man, what's up? And they say, thank you. We respect y'all. I was like, wow, we've done some work in this town, man, because enough people started to figure out that all of our problems, regardless of what color you were, are coming from the same building. And as it was told to Kelly and I when we were in Philly together, one of the guys, remember I told you looked like Kevin Hart, Kevin Hart, the guy that was in Philly with us, Kelly? Yeah, he sounded just like Kevin Hart, but was like actually tall, like a normal human being and not a midget. And this guy told Kelly and I that, he's got mad respect for us because y'all went after the head of the snake in broad daylight. And that's the most gangster shit he'd ever seen.
So we were on the bus going, and so they put us on the bus, right? And then they load up the bus, and obviously we're the two white guys on the bus, right? So immediately, right? The dudes are like, "What's up with you guys? You Jan Sixers?" And we're like, "Yes." And they're like, "That's cool. You know what I mean?" I'm like, "Okay." So we're talking a little bit as the bus is rolling, right? And then we stop in Baltimore, and we pick up a dude in Baltimore he is the quintessential loudmouth, just yapper and all this stuff. Like, man, they ain't gonna take me. I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And he's just going, right? And the whole bus is like, I'm like, someone is gonna call this guy out on his bullshit. You know what I mean? And so he's just rolling, and he's got Mercedes, and he's got this, and he's got money, and he's got all that. And I'm like, oh man, if I have to listen to this crap anymore, you know what I mean? Well, all of a sudden, someone does say something to him, and he's like, yeah, man, that's me. I was this, and this. And they're like, oh, damn. And they start talking. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe the guy's not too full of it. You know what I mean? So then we get, we end up going to Philly. I don't think we had spoken to him yet, Rob.
No.
But when we get to Philly, they put you in the holding cell while they're processing everybody, right? And Rob's got that trains coming look. He's like, man, is this gonna be okay? I don't know. Yeah, he was nervous.
The full clinch going on. We're going into prison. Barely holding it together.
So this guy's like, I forget what it was. He's like, hey man, what's your guy's story? We told him, hey, we're Jan Sixers. He wasn't on the bus when we were talking about it the first time. And he's like, oh, that's mad respect, bro. Listen, I just want you guys to know something. We're going into a bad spot, man. There's some bad people in here. And he goes, I got you too. Don't you worry about nothing. No one's going to mess with you. Ain't none of these DC boys going to let nothing happen to you guys because you're Jan Sixers. And he did.
Crazy.
Yeah. It was like a shot
It was
collar.
cool.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, he really, ultimately, when he got on the bus, I thought someone's going to shoot this guy down. But it turned out he was something bigger than the average Joe walking around there. Yeah, he was.
Well, what a lot of people don't know is that when we were in the jail, we would organize protests, whether it was, peacefully resisting, basically having sit-ins. They would tell us, hey, it's rack time. You guys go in your cells. And everybody, we had already discussed it, would come out and just sit down in the day room. And we're like, we're not going in our cells until you get some officers down here to address some of these issues we have going on, which were 2 years, no visits, 2 years, no religious services, a year, no haircuts, a year, no fingernail clippers. And whether it was food, whatever it was, black mold in the cells, it was any number of things on any given day.
Conjugal visits.
No conjugal visits, yeah, unless you like dudes, you're good though. But so
and there were some of them there that did.
Yeah, but don't talk about I didn't. I'm not supposed to say his name. But no, so we raised hell, and we had our people at the vigil. We had people on the outside. Our families had organized in Telegram groups, and
Shout out to the Freedom Corner, baby.
Yeah, shout out to Mickey and Nicole and everybody that's always out there. But we organized. We had people calling congressmen, writing letters, sending emails, and we were doing calls to action, all kinds of stuff. And so we got the U.S. Marshals in there a number of times, and then eventually, when MTG and all them came in there, Louis Gohmert came in. They got to witness what was going on in the other part of the jail. We were in a better part of the jail, but the other side of the jail was horrific over there. And so they I guess condemned part of it and shipped out like 400 inmates, and they said this is unacceptable and closed it out. And so that was really whenever the rest of the population realized that, hey, these guys may be fighting for their lives or whatever over here, but they're like helping everybody. And so
Yep.
and that's kind of why I'm passionate about justice reform, because we can make it. They are human beings, whether they match our skin color or
They're
not.
Americans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Americans.
They're citizens, and they deserve to be seen as human beings, and we want to invest in them so they can get back out into society. But so you guys were transferring. You guys met this guy on the bus.
Can I say something real quick, Shane? I want to add to that point what you're saying,
Absolutely.
though, because remember what I said earlier about how my background as a teacher actually came in handy here. When I left DC the first time and went to Northern Neck, night 2, dude, I couldn't believe what was happening, because I kind of had like that zoom out moment where you can kind of take everything in and realize, wow, this is a really big deal. The night that I was in Northern Neck, making introductions, talking to people, getting a layout, I'm finding myself telling a story to a young black man about the Battle of New Orleans.
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there explaining to him how, the British were trying to take America back. They were trying to cut off westward expansion by taking over the Mississippi River. And if they could do that, none of these colonials would be able to go any further across, into the Louisiana Purchase, all this stuff. And so really cool, informative story. And I'm explaining the story to him, and I'm like, yeah, man, there were so many different types of people there at that battle, the orders had to be given in 5 different languages.
Oh, wow.
Because the different types of people that were there, you had Creek and Choctaw Indian tribes, you had freed slaves, you had French,
Creole, probably.
yeah, Creole, you had militiamen, you had absolute it was real diversity at work.
Yeah.
And I was explaining the story to him, and I got this amazing book right here. There is Black Heroes of the American Revolution, where you had people, of all colors fighting for independence from tyranny. And regardless of what color you were, this was a cause worth fighting for, and that's what America's all about.
Right.
And that's been lost recently. And so here I am in Northern Neck explaining this story, and something, I think it was the Holy Ghost, tells me, hey, take a look around for a minute. And as I'm explaining this story, our bunks are real close. There's about 80 men in this intake area. And I'm telling the story to these young men, but I look around, everyone is awake in their bunks. The lights are off. We should all be sleeping. Everybody's listening to me. And the thought occurred to me, I'm like, wow, how many of these young men didn't have a father tell them bedtime stories at night? And here I am fulfilling that role, not only with just a story, but it's a story about how, America is fantastic. It's worth fighting for. And the American attitude is colorblind. It's all about whether or not you believe in liberty and our God, and that's it. And these young men really took to that. And so here I am fulfilling the teacher role while I am in prison. And that's what ended up being the moniker and the rep that kept me out of trouble the entire time. I was called teacher man and preacher man. And regardless of what color of the individual I was interacting with, they knew that I wasn't trying to get over on anybody. I was just trying to educate and inform. And that was that. And so I wanted to incorporate that, because that is, again, another contributing factor to how we changed the needle of the culture to be pointing in our direction. While we were incarcerated behind enemy lines with guns to the back of our heads, we were able to change what men were saying about us nationwide in the prison system, because of our integrity, because of our character, and because of the God that we serve.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and there is a deficit.
And that carried on. Hey, that carried on into Memphis, man. When I got to Memphis, there was a guy in our unit from DC, and he's like, "Hey, man, I heard you one of my Jan6 guys." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Man, we got all the DC boys got mad respect for you guys." He goes, "You're okay with me? You need anything? You let me know." You know what I mean? I was like, damn, that was cool. You know what I
Isn't
mean?
that
I didn't
awesome?
know.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy.
So,
Yeah.
so share with me, you guys. So this is walking into. You guys are on the bus. Met the guy that said, "I got your back in here." Y'all are in Philly now.
Yep.
So what kind of lay the groundwork for what this is right here? So
Hey, what's that?
So hey, listen. The funny part is when we were in that holding cell, they took Rob out first. Like they were checking everybody in, right? And they take Rob out, and they're like, "Okay, these guys are all going to this unit." And I'm like, "All right, well, I'm not going to see Rob again. It's over."
I
You know
was
what I mean?
I was like, see you around, man.
All right, bro. Yeah,
I love you.
so
that's
he was putting his nipple against the glass and everything.
No,
It
I
was
was
really
not.
weird.
oh, Bill. He's like, oh,
Definitely
Billy.
not. Shut that down right now.
So I sat in there. I was dead last to get pulled out. I'm like, oh man, this sucks. So I go over there, get my bedroll, and they're like, okay, you guys are going up, and I'm like, hey man, that guy that I came in with, is there any chance? He's like, look, dude, you guys are different units. It don't matter. It's out. You're out. I'm like, okay, shit. So I walk on the unit, and they're like, your room's this room. They give you your room number, your cell number, whatever the hell you want to call it. So I walk over there, and there's already 2 bunks in there. So I go back to the CO, and I'm like, hey, man, there's two bedrolls in this one already. There's people living in that one. He's like, well, go find another one then. You know what I mean? So I'm walking around, and I go upstairs, and right at the top of the stairs, there's a freaking like brand new room, man. It's almost like no one's ever lived in the thing. The brand new mats were in there. I was like, I'll take this one. And he's like, okay, he unlocks the door and lets me in. Well, as soon as that happens, old Rob comes running up. Meggs, what's up? They got me in with a crazy guy. I'm like, oh, man. He's like, they put me in with some crazy dude. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, okay. So the dude did look crazy. He turned out to be all right, but he looked crazy. I said, listen, bro. I said, I'm in a room by myself. I snore and I fart. If you can deal with those two things,
he does.
Welcome aboard, baby. Welcome aboard. So he's like, I don't care. I'm coming up here. I'm like, all right, go get your shit, man. So Rob moved in. Yep.
That was cool. So yeah, I forgot that we weren't supposed to be roommates.
No.
But I think that was
cellmates more.
Yeah,
probably,
yeah. That was to me a God thing, truly. And then the first month kind of goes by where we're just kind of passing time. And the cool thing about Kelly, Meggs, and I is that we had known each other, and granted, we got to get to know each other a little bit more while we were in Lewisburg. But this was our opportunity to really become thick as thieves, man. The best of friends, telling each other our entire life story, hanging out, and we were learning all kinds of card games and playing chess. Well, about a month into us being in Philly, we're thinking, what are we still doing here? Like, there's no reason for us to be here. Why are we still here?
Well, hold on a second, Rob. I just wanted to ask Meggs, how long was it until you got tired of him taking up all the mirror time, fixing his hair?
Oh man,
I don't need mirrors. Look
was
at
that? Well, okay.
I got nothing up top, and there's no hairspray or gel in prison, so it's like I don't even need anything. But the nicest thing about living with Rob is I got off 3 days a week. I got the cell to myself for the first half of the day because Rob would be in the shower doing his hair. And it takes 3 or 4 hours to do his hair. So
yeah, because they give us combs this big. So I gotta take like one strand.
Other dudes would come to the fucking room and like, hey man, where's Rob? I'm like, he's taking a shower. All right, I'll come back later. Hour later, they're like, hey man, where's Rob? I'm like, he's taking a shower, bro. They're like, oh, okay. Another hour later, hey man, where's Rob? I'm like, what the hell's this guy doing in the shower? I'm like, why don't you go ask him? Right, and
then they would come and ask me, like,
are you okay
in
there?
I'm like, I'm doing my hair, brother. That's what you said literally 4 days ago.
Turn that thing loose in there, man. What's going on?
Yeah, they don't get it, man. This is a gift from God. This is beauty right here.
Samson or what?
Maybe. I gotta stop listening to Delilah.
Shane, how devastated is he going to be in like 30 years when he looks like us?
Yeah.
Balding, no hair.
Shane,
God will humble the proud. That's for sure.
That's right. That's
you had
right.
long hair at one point in time, Shane. You
I
cut
did.
it off, but you had long hair.
Yeah.
It was condensed to the rear.
That's why this character has hair long in the back and none on the top.
You were growing
We
out.
all
a
had
ponytail,
long hair
else.
we all had long hair in DC for a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Remember Garrett Miller? He looked like a maniac. Oh my
Remember
God.
Kenny with
No.
the beard poodle?
Dude.
The whole
Kenny
poodle on
looked
his
like he'd
neck.
been stranded on an island for like
His
9
beard had a
years.
beard.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. That shit was crazy.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the book. So you guys
Sorry.
cellmates.
Okay,
Sorry.
so check this out. So we're sitting there about a month in, and Kelly and I are like thinking, what are we still doing here? Why are we in Philadelphia in the first place?
Mhm.
And we're playing chess, and I will admit Kelly is a much better chess player than I am. But I get him every once in a while. And we're sitting around, and as we're playing chess, it was as if a light bulb goes off over the top of our heads at the exact same time, and we're realizing that January 6th was none other than a chess move. And we talk about January 6th every single day. It's the day that changed all of our lives forever. But at that moment, Kelly, Meggs, and I are like thinking like, whoa, that is what that day was. And what if we wrote a book about what we know to be true about that day, what we saw, but then also what's been revealed about it, so that everybody else can be on the same page as us. And so, as you can see here with, the cover art of the book, you have that chess board.
Mhm.
Obviously, people think it's the whole Masonic thing or whatever. Truly, you see the chessboard and the chess piece inside the Capitol. This is something that I designed based off of the conversation that Kelly, Meggs, and I had that night, where we're like, you know what? We're going to commit to writing a book. We're going to commit to putting everything that we know about that day into the hands of the American people. And the whole concept was that, because of January 6th being a chess match, really, but a chess move. We're now curious about how far down the rabbit hole did this whole thing go. So we started the clock back in 2016, and it was almost like we were
If
going
you give
to
me a
school
second,
again.
Rob, and if you guys can see we got on the screen, it's the link to the Amazon to the book. If you guys
Yeah.
go in there
And
buy the
so
book.
And so I know that Kelly wants to jump in here real quick, but the last thing that I want to say in reference to that book and into that conversation is that at that moment, not only did we recognize that we had a mission to accomplish, but then we realized this is why we were brought to Philly. That there's no other reason, and that God brought us to Philly in order to get this book done. And I told Kelly, I was like, listen, dude, the minute we're done with this book, we're going to leave. And what happened, Kelly? We left the very next day.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like it's and dude, it was funny because they came and told us we were checking out, and Rob was only like halfway through writing the final draft, and he's like, "I gotta stay up all night. I gotta do this all night." So I'm making coffees and stuff and giving him coffees. I'm like, "Keep going, man, keep going." Because I told him, I said, "Listen, I'll keep talking all night long," and I'll be honest with you, Rob carried most of the weight on the writing side of it, all of it basically, but. I would just talk, and he would just write down notes and write down notes and write down notes, and then we would talk about stuff for a little bit, and then but Rob stayed up, man. He stayed up pulled an all-nighter the last day before we left, just to get that last copy done.
Oh
and then
yeah.
I took one of so we pulled a little I think we over exaggerate our value sometimes in life. And we felt like we were being like super audited by like the feds are watching us, man. They know we're trying to do something. You know what I mean?
We never know.
So I took a copy, he took a copy, and then the final copy we gave to another inmate who sent it out to someone else who finally got it to where it needed to go. So it was like we had to use covert operations.
But it got there though, right? That was like,
yeah,
get there.
Please get
Rob,
this.
Rob keistered his copy.
You roll it up like a phone book.
I knew that was coming.
Shove it in the artillery round.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no hair gel in prison, but there's a lot of lotion.
Yeah,
spit on it, Meggs.
So listen, check this out. I can honestly tell you a story that's freaking crazy. It's a crazy story, right? I'm in Oklahoma. After I left Philly with Rob, they fly me to Oklahoma. And being that I've got the domestic terrorist hashtag on me, I'm black boxed everywhere I go now, right? Mm-hmm. So I get to Oklahoma. They put me on the plane. And then as soon as we get to Oklahoma, I'm like, man, it's going to be forever to get off this plane. There's like, it was packed, right? First name, Kelly Meggs. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I'm off first. That's freaking
First
awesome,
class.
right? No, not good, right? They walk me down and they put me in this room by myself, right? After, because you come down the gangway in Oklahoma and then you stand on the platform and they undo you and then they take you down the hall and they put you in your cell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm like, all right, it's not that big. I'm like, they'll fit 20 or 30 of us in here. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting there and they start walking people off the plane and I see them all going in the room across the hall. And that's when I first started thinking, I'm like, why am I by myself and all these people are over there? You know what I mean? I haven't quite gotten it yet, you know?
A special destination for you.
Yeah. So next thing you know, the room across the way is full and it's me. And they brought in an MS-13 gang member with me. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And I'm like, what the hell are we doing, man? Oh, we went to a shoe, man. We went to a shoe. I'm like, oh, bro. I'm like, what the fuck? Well, as I'm standing there, and the guys literally got the list of names in front of him, right? He's got all the names, and he's like checking the names off as they're dragging him out, right? And I'm looking over his shoulder through the glass, and I see my name, and it's highlighted domestic terrorist.
Wow.
And that's the first time that really hit me. Like
and when this was after you left Philly, right? This was
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because so when I left DC coming out and made it to Oklahoma City, they had labeled me domestic. When I came through originally, it wasn't anything, but when I came back through, they labeled said domestic terrorist. I kept the paperwork and everything like that. It's proof. But they put me in the shoe coming back through as well with another guy who was actually my cellmate. Was a guy, a skinny white kid who had actually sent. His family was killed by one of his family members. I think his uncle or something was killed by the Assad regime in Syria. And so he knew that ISIS was fighting the Assad regime. So he attempted to join ISIS to go fight Assad for killing one of his family members. And they arrested him for sending aid and support to a foreign terrorist organization and gave him like 10 years in prison. But yeah, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah, go ahead.
No, so they finally get me on the unit, and going back to what we were talking about, you know, it's the first time I've actually seen it physically happen. I'm like, oh man, this is not good. So they when you're in Oklahoma, it's a transfer center. So every day there's a new guy coming, a new guy going, and it's moving quick. So they put a guy in with me that was he had a whole shit ton of I don't know what the hell he had. I'm guessing it's meth or whatever it was that he had got. Right? And so he made all these little. He made us. He's like, dude, do me a favor, man. Keep your plastic from your silverware every tray. And I'm like, okay. So I did. So he's got all these little balls lined up, man. And it's like they basically call his number that it's time.
Oh,
to go.
so he
like,
had it on him. I thought you meant he was arrested for a bunch of it. You meant he had a bunch of drugs.
He had it on him.
Yeah,
he had it with him, right? He has it with him. So he's like, bro, I got to get this up my ass. I got to get out of here. I'm like, he's like, they're coming to get me in a minute. No, he's like, drops trowel and just starts shoving his. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, come on, bro. I'm like, this is horrible.
You're like, first Rob and now this. You're like,
I know. No, I know.
The whole manuscript, and then now
I'm like, at least it doesn't take him 4 hours. You know what I mean? It was quick.
Oh no!
He's rolling up one of those old Atlas maps.
So he jams 5 of these things up there, and he's off. And I'm like, man, that was crazy as shit, you know.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally, yeah.
But then the cool part about the Oklahoma shoe was that I guess they changed who the shoe lieutenant was because I don't know if there was a reason why, but I gave this guy a hard time, and they brought in another lieutenant, and he moved me to a different place. He moved me in with another JN6 guy, and we had a corner cell, even though we were in the shoe. I mean, he gave us a good cell. We could overlook the airport, so all day long we got to watch the planes come in and stuff. It was at least something to do.
I forgot when you said that, it sparked something to me. I did tell them like, hey man, they labeled me a domestic terrorist, this, that, or the other. They went to some kind, I guess they have like a shoe meeting or whatever. They eventually, like after doing about a week in the shoe, they let me go to population, which was cool. So how long did both of you guys do in the BOP?
Well, I got to Loretto, I want to say in September, because you remember, Kelly, we left on September 11th. You remember that? And we were telling the guy, the bus driver, like, this is a really bad day for a terrorist attack. You know, like, let's hope we actually get there. And we didn't know if we were, I mean, you know, you kind of get paranoid after everything that has already happened to us, but we kind of joked around that something would have happened to us on that day. But I remember we were transferring on September 11th, and I think I went back to Lewisburg actually for, I believe, 11 days. And then I want to say that I touched down in Loretto on September 22nd. And I left Loretto on August 29th. So almost an entire year, I want to say.
Okay. And you, Meggs, how long did you do in the BOP? You were from when you got what, almost 2 years or what?
Yeah, I got well, let's see, May we went to Philly. No, we went to Philly in June.
Of
July.
2023?
It was July.
It was
I
July.
got sentenced in May, and then I spent a month and a half in the shoe. Then we went to
of 23, right?
Philly.
Yeah, well, because you
20
remember, Shane, we
yeah.
spent 4th of July together in the DC jail in 2023. So we left, Kelly, Meggs, and I left the DC gulag in July then.
Man, we had
somewhere around the 8th or 10th or something like that. It was.
And when you say that, it reminded me of like the holiday. You know, I mean, not only the hopium dens, but the holiday celebrations, and a lot of people were instrumental. But I especially remember you, Rob, being, you know, wanting us to celebrate, wanting us to do, you know, fellowship and stuff like that.
Happy things.
Yeah, happy things.
Well, we had to. So I kicked those things off when I got there in 2021 because of how many people weren't joking about killing themselves. I mean, think about it. We weren't just in jail. We had the whole weight of the federal government breathing down our necks. Our lawyers were betraying us left and right. Half the country's been convinced to hate us, and the imposter president is now calling us domestic terrorists and all this stuff. And so, like, it was a lot of weight. And then on top of that too, we're in the heart of the corruption of America. So,
you had guys like Caldwell's mom died, Melissa's dad died. You had people, Schwartz went through a divorce. You had people's family,
and our wives and our girlfriends are leaving us left and right. I mean, like everything.
The churches turning their backs on people.
Yes.
People's children testifying against them at trial. Like it was a whole.
Everything was crashing down all at once. And so I remember sitting at a table with Jeff Sable, and we're like, dude, like something's got to give, man, because these guys are really going to start killing themselves. And I know that once one person does it, that becomes a curse.
Well, on the outside, we had people, Matthew Perna and other people. There's probably been like 4 or 5 people that had killed themselves to avoid enduring what we were presently enduring. And so I think that was also a factor in that as well.
Huge factor. And so I remember,
I mean, there was a couple guys we were rooting for, but I know it never.
Well, I will say this: as far as it goes, when I was in there, I knew, like, studying, you know, like Ranger history and military history. One of the ways that the POWs in Vietnam got through what they got through was through levity and playing jokes and games and things like that. So that's what I incorporated when I put those shows together, the Hopium Dens. It was an opportunity for people to enjoy that levity, to laugh, and to forget where they were for an hour. You know, and I know that you guys remember me singing that song from the Mulan cartoon, I'll Make a Man Out of You, the first time that we did the Hopium Dens, and that was cool. But when I came back to DC the second time around, there were no Hopium Dens in my absence. So I started those back up again, and I did the same act, I'll Make a Man Out of You, a second time. And that audience was kind of mixed because you had some of the old guard that was still there, the first wave J6ers. And then the second wave of J6ers were also there. And so I got to do this. So some folks had seen it for the first time, others for the second. But I felt that it was on my heart that God asked me to make sure that these men don't hurt themselves beyond what the devil is already trying to do to them, you know. So that was a priority, man. And that was a lot of fun. And some of the memories that I have from being locked up, especially on the 4th of July in 2023, where I think that's the most patriotic 4th of July we ever experienced, because here we are in the belly of the beast. Our country's totally betrayed us, and yet we're going to sing the national anthem. We're singing Ragged Old Flag from Johnny Cash, and we're having a blast. You know, Bobby's got a cake that he baked, you know, for the 4th of July. You know, I mean, like we did everything that we could to pretend that we weren't at Hell's Gates. And we survived that way by the grace
Dempsey
of God.
Doodles, you know, we got to see the fireworks. All that was those are some memories, and it's weird. I've never served. You have, Rob, but I feel like, you know, I hear the term like battle buddies, and you guys.
Yeah.
That's what I told Tony last night. Like our friendships and our bonds were forged like in the fire, and I don't know if it was you. We're always sending each other memes and videos and stuff, but somebody sent me something, or I saw it on Instagram or something, where it said that God didn't save Daniel from the lion's den, right? He saved him in the lion's den, and
right.
And other people in the fire, he saved them in the fire. He didn't spare them from the fire; he saved them in the fire. So we had to go. We were forged in that pressure cooker that was the full weight and force of the American government bearing down on us, and every other aspect of pressure they could apply, from the prison guards to the inmates to whatever it was. They used that tool against us to try to force us into taking plea offers or testifying against other January 6ers or whatever it was. And freaking, you know, some people broke under the pressure. And I try to give people grace in that aspect. I don't like it. But you know, I tell people, I told them, they told me, they offered me 92 to 115 months. And I told them I would love to consider your plea offer, but I don't negotiate with terrorists. And so
there you go.
I mean, my lawyer was pissed off about that, but like, that's how I felt. These, you know, and you guys, my background is different. Like, I understand my actions at the Capitol. People are like, oh, you shouldn't have broke a window, or you shouldn't have thrown stuff at the police. Well, people were getting the hell beat out of them.
They were.
And I don't care who
right
you
in
are.
Front of you. Right in front of you.
And so I'm okay with, like, I understand, okay, this guy's a convicted felon and he does X, Y, and Z at the Capitol. Okay, we're going after him. We're going to get him. But you guys, honorable lives, veteran, you know, father, grandpa, never been in trouble a day in your life. And for them to weaponize the government in that manner against people who did very little at the Capitol, and with honorable backgrounds, that's what was really the travesty was to me, was seeing how they treated honorable, not that I have lived a dishonorable life, but I have lived a life full of trouble. And so it just really bothered me to see them go after our veterans and people who had lived decent lives in the manner that they did. So if you guys could tell us, if you guys could give me a little, like, Shane, you really need to read this book. Like, what would you say? Give me, you know, give me some crumbs so I'll know, like, why, you know, I haven't, I'm gonna be honest, I read the first and second page. I haven't made it past that yet, but I did see I made the book. So I was happy about it. I didn't even know. I was like, I'm good. I don't need to read anything else. I saw my name.
I have to read it now. Fuck it.
Yeah.
The only reason you ever read those January 6 books is to see if your name's in them. That's all. I mean, I was there. I don't need to read about it.
I was there. Yeah.
In that vein, Julie Kelly wrote the January 6 book, and I indirectly made the book, and it said, like, Dominic Pizzola broke a window, right? And it had that in there. But then it said, and then on the other side of the building, someone else broke a window, and that was it didn't even mention my name. I'm someone else.
Yeah, that's what you need. You need a shirt that says "I'm someone else."
Yeah. With a tomahawk on it.
Yeah. I'd buy it. I'd wear it. I'm someone else.
Yeah. So give me the teaser. Oh, I like the bag. I didn't see these pictures. Right. So give me the teaser for both of y'all. Give me a teaser for the book. So tell us why people should read your book.
All right, I'll go first since Lego's being nice today. Realistically, it's just a situation where we talked about some of the things that were messed up about January 6th. And it was stuff that no one's talked about, and things that really play on your mind when you start thinking about how military operations are ran, how things are done, how the actual security for these politicians is set up, and that it's impossible that they actually believed there was an insurrection occurring. Because if they actually believed that, we would have all been dead. Okay. There's no way around that. Okay. So the fact that we weren't all dead was a proof enough for me and Rob, once we started talking about it, to start going, wait a minute, there's more here. And we started unraveling a lot of the lies that build up to January 6th. The fact that, the real way that the book came about was someone was getting their ass beat in chess a lot. Okay. Like every
Wasn't
night,
me.
multiple games.
Wasn't
Yeah.
me.
Oh, yeah, it was. It definitely was. Okay. And so he's like, he would make a move. And I'm like, dude, you have to think ahead, man. You have to think ahead. You have to think multiple steps ahead.
That's right.
And he's like, yeah. And I go, it's just like January 6th. The whole setup with January 6th was, the Democrats played their move. Then Trump responded with, I want all my people at the Capitol. And then they came back with, we're going to be violent. And we're going to hide us. And, and then, we're going to wear protective gear to protect ourselves from the Antifa people. Well, next thing you know, here we are in freaking battle ready gear.
Yeah.
Defensively, honestly, we all came defensive in posture.
Yeah.
But when they've got pictures of everybody beating the hell out of the cops, it's no longer defensive.
Yeah.
They utilize that entire narrative to spin the whole
See, they
thing
came prepared. Look at them. They were intent on
Exactly.
doing it. Yeah.
Yep.
But that's why the game was played. The pre-planning of January 6th was a complete and total military operation. They have agitators, instigators, motivators in the crowd that moved people around. They had handlers. Come over this way. They're down here. Dude, it's everywhere. Their names were all over it. And we talk about that a lot in the book, just to how the fact that the complete narrative was BS. And that's one of the things we talk about from the beginning. So I am working on something right now, just so you know. I've got 2 attorneys, 2 prior military guys, and myself are working on something that's going to be pretty amazing when you see the military operation of January 6th.
Okay.
That should be pretty good. It's something we just started talking about, but we are determined to put together how January 6th was a military operation, and it was orchestrated by the CIA, Department of Defense, et cetera.
Okay. But for now, we're talking about One Question Remains.
Yep.
Your Move by Kelly Meggs and Robert Morss.
Yes.
You can find that on Amazon. We've got the link up, or the what it looks like on Amazon right now. I actually own 2 copies, which I need to read. But yeah, Rob, so go ahead and give us your teaser for the book. I'd love to hear. You guys are such I like the 1-2 punch. So
yeah. Well, hey, Kelly and I are a good team. That's the other thing that really made this book such a thrill to write, is even though Kelly's like 1,000 years old, we were still able to connect, and get along with one another and come at this thing from like 2 excellent perspectives.
How did Moses part in the Red Sea compare to the insurrection, Meggs?
That was probably
very
inside job
similar.
too.
It was definitely an inside job.
Yeah.
But guess what? If they would have taken them back to Egypt, they would have been charged with insurrection.
Oh,
that's right. That's right.
They went on the lamb, so it was good.
Yeah. All right, so I got 3 little crumbs for you, because that's what you were curious about reading. So one of the things, granted, I'm not going to spoil the whole book for you, but one of the things that actually happened after the fact, that when Kelly, Meggs, and I were in Philly, was I was in Loretto, and this is something that I kind of threw in there as I was editing the book. I met a guy who claims that God told him to hang on to this specific cover of this magazine for since 2016. So multiple years, no reason why he hangs on to this thing. But as I'm editing a book and I'm sending more little pieces that I thought, oh man, that needs to be included while I'm in Loretto, I also include the fact that, and this is something that you'll find in the book, and this gentleman that I met in Loretto hung on to this thing, he says, because God told him to, none other than a copy of a magazine cover from the magazine called The Week. And perhaps some of your audience might be familiar with the magazine. I never was until I came to prison, but this particular cover of The Week has the caption, "What will the Trump supporters do if they think the election is stolen?" And the crowd that is depicted from the art of the cover of this magazine is nothing but a bunch of white folks, middle-aged. They've got torches and pitchforks, and they've got guns, and they've got their MAGA hats on. Everything that the mainstream media told you that January 6th looked like. But like I told you, this issue came out in 2016. So one of the questions that we ask before we ask the one question that remains is, how long were the breadcrumb trail being laid for the unassuming American public to just accept that January 6th was an insurrection without questioning it at all, because they had seen it before. They had been molded to accept this narrative. They had been anticipating it. They had been expecting it. They'd been wanting it. And so when I interacted with this guy who he said, God told me to hold on to this, and now I know why. Here's this cover for you. I'm thinking, wow, this is another win for us. And so I include that in the book as I'm editing it. I'm sending this stuff home. I get to the halfway house on weekend passes. I come here. I'm editing the book, so it's loaded with facts and information for the reader. But that's one of the things where you have to sit back and think, wait a second, how long had this been designed to take place?
Oh, as you
Something
say that,
along these
I
lines.
think about like Mark Milley saying, "I want to know better white rage and understand it," and that's some kind of narrative that they're kind of wedging in there, because all Trump supporters are angry white men, supposedly, allegedly,
And they've
which
been
is not
talking
true.
about that
But,
for years.
right.
And if all you're hearing is negative things about Trump, negative things about Trump supporters, and then what do you know? They storm the Capitol. Of course, you're going to think,
Of course
"See,
they
what did we
did.
tell you?"
Yeah.
And they're going to
Well,
feel
that's
like
the
they have
key.
the
Is
moral
like,
high ground.
where is the puppet master? I mean, they're somewhere, and
Yes.
how long had it been developing this all for that 2020 election?
Yep.
I have an
Because
unusual
that's ultimately
theory.
what it came down to, is like they picked the right time to make it happen, and that's what they did. And it's
Yep.
like they just kept waiting and waiting and waiting.
Yep. So the second crumb that I want to offer your audience is that, and this is thanks to Kelly. I didn't know this until we actually put our heads together. And this is why, again, we're a great team, because he had a lot of information. I knew how to dress it up with, a literary background. And so that's what made us a fantastic team. But he mentions that on Sputnik Radio, there's an individual that claims that they have hotel tickets and plane receipts
Larry
from none other
Johnson.
than
Larry Johnson.
Alexander Shalupa, which is a DNC operative, confirming that amongst us in the crowd on January 6th, there was Ukrainian Azov Brigade members. So the special forces of Ukraine were in the crowd disguised as Trump supporters.
Absolutely.
Why? Why were they there? They didn't have to be there unless there was a motive, because they knew if Biden does get into the presidency, maybe their money's about, or their country's about to get a lot of money from the taxpayers, all the Ukraine aid that was about to be sent their way. So that asks another question. How long was the Ukraine war planned? How long was this going to be kicked off? Why were the Ukrainian Azov Brigade members, who have a long history of overturning governments, why were they there?
Yeah.
Because we know that they were. So
Absolutely.
riddle me
Well, and
that.
do you remember the guy peeling the glass out of that front window who pushes that guy out of the way? And they've identified him as some kind of Ukrainian. I believe he was probably one of the Azov
Why?
members.
Tell me why. So that's breadcrumb number 2 that I want to offer. And then breadcrumb number 3, which is my favorite, because I threw this in here as like a last minute decision before I hit enter, on Amazon. I designed, and if you can give me wide on this one, you'll love it. So on the back of the book, in the last page here that I incorporated, you'll see that that's the last line of the Declaration of Independence right there. And that's actually where you're supposed to collect the signatures of the January Sixers, so that as you meet the January Sixers, they can add their name to the bottom of the same line that our founding fathers added their name to when they declared independence from tyranny of Britain. And so the book now becomes a collector's item of the January 6th movement and the community, because you can now collect more January 6th signatures in the exact same spot that our founding fathers added their names. And so not only does it become a collector's item, but it also becomes an integral part of our national history, because of the significance of what's inside this book, because of the quotes, the scripture, the history lessons, and the unveiling of January 6th actually being a lobster trap. But you can also add your name to where Thomas Jefferson adds his. And that to me was like, the coolest idea that I had last minute that I know came from God to consecrate that this book is going to be a part of history, and it's going to be something that hopefully our kids and our grandkids reference when they try to understand what really happened on January 6, 2021.
Yeah. Do you have one with what's the most signatures you have on one? Have you gathered a bunch of?
I have gathered. I gathered a bunch at CPAC. You remember that one?
Okay,
So I was
yeah.
running.
I don't
I'll
know.
tell you what's stupid. I've been signing the book in the front cover the whole time. I'm like,
Oh
I
man!
know. I'm just signing the front cover. Go. Sign the front cover.
Yeah.
Go. I
Well, now you
forgot
know.
about
Now
that.
you know.
No, I knew that. I just forgot it. That's what happens
Oh,
when you're
yeah.
old.
When you're 1,000 years old,
Yeah.
things don't work as well as they used to. Well, yeah. Again, that's the book is titled "One Question Remains: Your Move" by Kelly Meggs and Robert Morss. So appreciate you sharing that. That gives me a lot of more insight into what I'm fixing to have to sit down in here and read. Do you have any idea how hard it is for me to sit down and read a book?
Hey.
It's difficult, but I give you my word. I am going to read this book. So that's my mission right now.
You'll enjoy it, and you'll find yourself thinking,
Shane,
"I knew it."
If you want to sleep better at night, just have Rob read it to you over the phone.
Yeah, do you guys have an audiobook? That would be,
We need to do that. We need to do that. We need to get together, and Kelly and I need to split this thing down the middle, and he reads a section, I reads a section, so you can hear our voices, and that would be perfect if we could do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would love to facilitate it. And now chapter 2. And then
Right, yeah.
Rob will come in and be like, there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's do it.
So I'm shoving the book up my ass. Oh, no.
There I was.
This is a shitty book. Wait,
yeah. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
You're always about shoving things up your butt. What is that about?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, you remember the Bobby skit?
Yeah.
The opium.
We
what were you baking something? What was that? You were baking, or what was that? You were doing
Bobby bakes and cooks.
Bobby bakes.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah, a little bit of BBC in the DC jail, man.
BBC.
Bobby bakes and cooks.
Oh,
so
dude, I kept looking at him too. As I'm playing him in the Hopium Net, I kept looking at him, and he was so mad. He's just sitting there like this, just so pissed. Because I was dogging on him for like an hour straight,
I love Bobby, man. He has a new baby. It's freaking awesome, man.
That's cool.
And I just want to ask, when did you start liking girls, Bobby?
I know.
Well, he transitioned after prison.
Okay. He got back on testosterone when he got out there and was like, okay, this is where this goes.
He quit the yoga classes. He quit yoga classes and baking. And remember he wore that cut up sweatshirt all the time? Like
yes. There are some good stories from the gulag.
So there are some good stories.
Meggs, Rob, you got out prior to the pardons, but maybe this is primarily for you, Meggs. Just kind of share with me your experience of, maybe election day and then inauguration day, what it was like leaving prison or finding out that you're actually getting out, or wondering like, what is this going to apply to us, since you guys got commuted. You didn't get pardoned, but you did get released. So just kind of share that process with me and what that was like for you.
Well, for me, it all was coming down to, I honestly never thought Trump was going to get back in, but I didn't think they were going to let it happen. I knew it could happen.
You were doom and gloom a lot of the times. I
didn't let him. I just didn't think it was going to happen because
he was bracing for impact.
Yeah.
So, but when they shot him in July in Butler, I think that was a turning point across the board. Yeah. So, so that was like it was a multifaceted inspiration for me. We were watching regular TV because we didn't get Fox News. We didn't get any decent freaking news channels. So the only thing that was covering the Trump rally, they were watching it on Telemundo. right next to me, right?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So I'm kind of not paying attention. I'm kind of looking over, but I can't understand it. So,
Right.
you know, and we're watching Gold Rush or whatever was on, you know what I mean? So we're like sitting there watching, and I'm like checking it out and watching, checking it out. All of a sudden, the Spanish dudes, get her, get her, get her, get her. They're yelling for me, right? And I'm like, what? And they're like, they shot him. They shot him. I'm like, what?
Oh, God.
I am like, oh my God. Well, next thing you know, now it's coming on CNN and all these other things, right? So now every TV goes on to it, right? So you got the entire unit, the black TV, the sports TV, the white TV, the Spanish TV. They're all on this, right?
Hmm.
And man, when the first time when they showed when they showed him getting up, and dude, I'm telling you, I was in the freaking day room with 120 men, and you know how it is. You separate yourself, emotions, prison. Emotions, prisons.
Yeah.
They're two totally separate things, bro. I started crying.
Mm.
And I wasn't crying hard, just enough in my eye that if someone would have really paid attention, they would have seen it, right? And then he stood up and he did that fight thing, man. And I'm telling you, half that unit was like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, they can't take him down. They can't take him down. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm like, this is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when I got fired up. And I picked up my pen and I started writing Fight, which was the other book. But it wasn't supposed to be a book, by the way. It was supposed to just be a bunch of articles that I was writing for the New American Magazine.
Okay.
And I was just and it just started writing. And it was so much stuff happening right then. By the time I would finish a little 3 or 4 page chapter, boom, here's another thing out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is why he wants to close the border. This is why we need JFK to handle all this stuff. And I'm just like pounding. And I sent it out, and she's like, I'm making this a book. And I'm like, that's fine. If you want to make it a book instead of articles,
so who the hell does that? Gets shot in the ear and then jumps up. And then I heard him tell his little inspirational story. He said, I was on the ground. I wanted to get my shoes on. He said, I got up and I looked at the crowd and I saw they were in despair and they were panicking and everybody was crying. And he's like, I had to let them know that I was okay. And that's when I was like, fight. I'm like, if that's me, I'm like, get me the hell out of here. They're going to take my head off. Like, I'm trying to get the hell out of there. But I'm like, you can't train that. That is natural bred, instinctual,
they say he
warrior mentality, dude.
They said literally he was just pissed. He was so mad that they would do that. And that's what he did. He attacked. You know, it's funny because I converted to Catholicism a few months ago. Okay. And it's not that much difference. It's the same thing, really, ultimately. That's because you don't understand it. That's okay. I get it. When you don't understand, it's easy to condemn. I did it my whole life. I'm born and raised a Baptist and a Presbyterian. So when I met my wife, I said, I can't even consider marrying you. You're an idol worshiper. You know what I mean? Literally, that's the way I looked at him. You know what I mean? So I'm in there visiting with the priest, right? And he's like, I just sent President Trump a letter. And I'm like, really? I said, what'd you send him? He goes, I don't, and I'm horrible with verses and stuff. I can't remember that stuff. But it said that they took the ram and they cut its right ear. And they placed the blood upon the right ear of Aaron to signify that he would be the leader of the church and the leader of God's people. And there's 2 verses in the Bible about that. And I've got it written down in my room. I should grab it, but I didn't. But anyway, long story short, and he says, I sent that to President Trump because I believe that God was anointing him to run our country this next time by putting the blood upon his ear. And I was like, wow, that's
deep.
That's pretty serious. That's pretty serious.
Kelly, well, what you just kind of comes back to what you're talking about earlier, Shane, where we're going to see either miracles or we're going to see God showing off, not prior to the lion's den or not prior to the fiery furnace, but in the furnace, in the lion's den. I mean, God consecrates people through pain and suffering, and our God is a tough God, you know. So
Yeah.
we should never expect life to be easy. And as a matter of fact, we should honestly never even pray for that, because that's denying the opportunity for God to use us and mold us.
Yeah.
You know, iron sharpening iron, like you said, Shane, in the DC jail is a violent act. And so, just like what you just said, Kelly, man, that's amazing, because in order to be anointed, in order to have that covering, in order, you know, for David to even feel like he could handle Goliath, he had to fight a bear and a lion first. You know, and so we shouldn't be surprised, and if anything, we should welcome that kind of challenge. And I think that's why, and I know I can say this on behalf of all three of us, but the January 6th, I guess, epoch, if you will, made us better men. But we didn't become better men because we sat back and watched it all on TV. We got thrown into the furnace. We got thrown into the lion's den. And we know that God was there with us. And we know we can't even ignore how many times that we were plucked from danger or plucked from something disastrous.
Absolutely.
And God had mercy on us, changed us into better men so that we could fulfill what he needs us to do now. Didn't happen while we were on the couch watching this thing from the TV. It happened while we were in the furnace, in a fire. And that's exactly how God blesses you, is he says, you want this? And he shoves you in the chest to say, show me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the same thing. Well, Jesus said, you know, they did this unto me, they're going to do worse unto you. And then you think about how the sword is formed and it's put in the fire, and all the impurities are beaten out of the steel, and it's just it is a hot, and it's a furnace, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of how, but in the end result is the sword, and it's a weapon that's formed that God is going to use for his purpose. So, Meggs, we were headed to winning the election, which Butler played a pivotal role in that, and then we were going to go on to your pardon moment.
So the election side
too.
of things, obviously, the election went great. I remember at 2:00 in the morning, I'm banging on my bunk, and it's funny, at that point I had a cell phone, so it doesn't matter anymore. I can say that.
Allegedly had a cell phone.
So like, hey, we won. My son is screaming. You know, it's 2:00 in the morning, which means it's 3:00 in the morning here. You know what I mean? And so yeah, my son was pumped. My wife was pumped. It was really pretty awesome. But
so you knew you were going home, like you felt pretty sure at that moment you were.
I mean, I was 99% sure. You know what I mean? The guy's kind of tells the truth. You know what I mean? So no matter what the left says, he tells the truth. So I was I was a little bit shocked after the pardon when I went down to leave, and they called me back in, and they're like, hey man, you got to go, you're on probation, so you've only got 72 hours to get home. And I'm like, what? How can I be on probation, man? And he's like, you only got commuted, you didn't get pardoned. And I'm like, how is that even a thing? I thought but see, that's the kind of stuff that happens, man. That's the kind of stuff that Trump does, that you can't. Trump's wild, man. Look over here, look over here, look over here. Boom. You know what I'm saying?
That's not checkers. He's playing chess. He's not playing checkers. If they pardon you guys, your whole indictment and your trial and all that stuff goes away. But now you leave that intact. You're out of prison.
But let's take a step back before that. My point was, all Trump talked about is violent charges, violent charges, violent charges, violent charges. And the media is like, we're not going to pardon people with violence. We're not going to pardon people with violence. We're not going to pardon people with violence. Everybody with violence got pardoned.
Yeah, absolutely.
The people that didn't are the people that didn't have violence. The non-violent people. They had no idea that was going to happen. And guess what? The way he did it, the people with seditious conspiracy still remaining open. Nobody's even talked about the fact that he pardoned violent people now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just a talking point. They don't care.
It was actually done. No, they don't care at all. But that's my point. Now, what does the commutation mean? Okay, so the original civil lawsuit that is against Trump right now, that's the only remaining one in D.C. They dropped one of them that are against us. But all the 13 people that are remaining commuted are all on this lawsuit with Trump. The civil case filed by the Capitol Police in D.C., the city of D.C., or whatever you call it, the district, they've used the Oath Keeper original indictment to create the civil case. If our indictment is unwound and overturned, it destroys the civil case as well.
Hmm.
So, and you can do everything with our case. You can approve the line by the officers. You can prove the overcharging by the prosecution and the DOJ. You can prove that there were instigators, agitators, manipulators, people that were pushing people around, handlers in the crowd, and all the informants on the ground because they were around us. And then you can also show that there was evidence tampering in our case. I mean, we had a little bit of everything in our case.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where I think that, knowing some of the people I know that work in the White House, I don't think it was accidental.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, listen, we can sit here and we can say what we want. And we can talk about how Donald Trump doesn't care about us right now. He got us pardoned and he's done with us and whatever. Donald Trump has a legacy.
That's right.
His legacy has a stain on it right now because they've been allowed to mark him as an insurrectionist with the January 6th defendants, and that needs to change. And it's pretty simple to change it. I mean, it's something I've been talking about every time I have an opportunity to speak to people. First and foremost, the 2020 election was stolen. Okay,
Absolutely.
Not going to talk about ballots. Not going to talk about software. Not going to talk about Dominion voting machines. Mark Zuckerberg gave $400 million in illegal campaign donations through advertising to the Democratic Party. Not reported. We know that's a fact. 51 intelligence agents covered up the Hunter Biden laptop. We know that's a fact. That's election fraud. Third thing was 3 years of Russian collusion hoax, chasing him around, telling everybody that he's working with Russia and he's an agent of Russia.
Spying on him?
Not true.
Yeah,
Not true. Not true. That alone, those three things alone are election fraud. Yeah. So we don't even need to go into ballots and all these conspiracy theories that they keep throwing in our face. Let's just talk about what we know, right?
Well, hey, time out. Everything that Kelly just said, also in one question remains. So we go back in time to try to bring everybody back up to page with us so that everybody understands why we were as upset as we were on January 6th. Everything that Kelly just said, not only do we mention and confirm for the reader, but we walked the reader up from 2016 to 2021 so that you understand the mentality that we have looking at that Capitol going, you did this to us, you did this to us, you did this to our families, you did this to our churches, you did this to our communities, you did this to our economy, and you stole the election, you killed my mother, all this stuff. Like, we have every right and responsibility to be at that Capitol that day. You stole our elections on top of it all. One of those things is a wrong, a crime. But you stole our elections and then you call us a terrorist on top of it all, man. No, there's got to be justice. And I will say this too. I don't want to totally take over here because I think you're on a roll, Kelly, but I will say this. Donald Trump is not leaving that White House until he vindicates 2020 election and he vindicates January 6th. Because of that stain that Kelly's talking about, he will not leave. That's going to be a priority for him to fix so that when he walks out of there, everybody knows without a doubt, wow, he was right. He never should have conceded that.
Right about everything.
It was indeed stolen. And January 6th was a lobster trap designed to ruin him and all of us in this call together. So he's not going to leave the White House until he fixes that. I know that for a fact. He can fix the economy. He can bankrupt the CCP. He can fix the border. He can do all these things. But deep down, what he thinks about before he goes to bed at night is, man, I need to fix the 2020 election and I need to fix January 6th so that when he walks
you got to understand something
House,
too.
They don't come after him again.
The thing you have to understand too, and then this is where I go. The 2020 election was stolen. Therefore, January 6th was not an insurrection. January 6th was patriots trying to prevent their country from being stolen while everybody else sat on their ass on the sidelines. And we need to have the respect that we stood up for what it meant to be an American and to know and listen to our president who's telling you that it's stolen. Yeah. I mean, the man wasn't lying. Okay.
Our duty. Our duty as citizens.
And you're going to, exactly. It wasn't my right. It was my duty. That's what I had to do. Okay. Our forefathers did it. It's what we did. That's what they do. You know what I mean? That's right. I can tell you this, that narrative is going to flip. When does it flip? I don't know. But all I know is right now he just signed, and this is one of the things he'll do. and he just signed this executive order on an auditing the 2020 election. You know that, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 4 days ago.
Nice.
Actually, Gretchen Whitmer was in the House.
Oh, that's why she covered her face, right?
Yes, exactly. He was signing the executive order on the election fraud. So when he did that, when he signed that, all he has to do is uncover the election fraud.
Yeah,
and it's over. It's all coming apart. It doesn't matter. Those people were justified in their actions. They did what every American should have been doing. Told you it was stolen, and here's all the evidence.
You don't listen.
But I don't think he needs to go back into all the voting aspects of it. I think he could just basically stick to those 3 items we just talked about.
Yeah.
But there needs to be an investigation, though, Kelly, because the people that did what they claimed we did need to have their day in court, and they need to go to prison, or they need to be hung. I mean, that's treasonous stuff that they did to this nation. Yeah. They need to wear the orange suit. And they need to know what it's like to feel like what the shoe is like. I mean, you can't just say, okay, yeah, I'm right, you're wrong. No, dude, you try to take over our country, you're going to prison. Like, that needs to happen, man.
Absolutely. So I want to ask, what is the question that remains? You say there's one question. What is the question?
Kelly, are we going to spoil it, or are we going to make him read the book?
You can leave it out. I just was wondering. It's in the book, so that's
it is in the book. Yes.
Okay, I'll read it then. Don't spoil it for anybody. I want to read. I want to find out myself. I just was thinking. I was like, what is the question?
Okay, so the reason why
the question is really, how much can you keister?
Yeah. What's the limit?
Like, shut up.
Yeah. Well, okay. So on a more serious note, though, Kelly and I were trying to decide, what do we call this book? We had a couple names. But there's so many rabbit holes. There's so many questions. There's so many things that are left unsaid about the 2020 election, the pandemic, January 6th, all that stuff. We're thinking, what if we just condensed it down to that singular question that you can ask after knowing all this, after wondering what's going on? Because we ask 15 questions of the reader that we don't have the answer to. We want those answers, and we hope to get those answers within the next couple of years. But we have one last question that remains at the end of everything that you just read to tie it all together, so that the reader feels motivated to want to go to something like January 6th again, because it is their right, it's their responsibility, it's their duty, and they feel proud to be an American again, because we have existed as a nation for the last 3 decades, I would say, without that raw American pride. Yeah. Enter Donald Trump, we've got it back, and then the left and the communists that have been incepted into our government agencies try to make it illegal to love your country. Make it illegal to love your home. And that's something we reject. We refuse. We're proud nationalists. We love our country, and we love our king upstairs. And so all of that was designed against us by this latest, Biden regime. And so it's a direct rejection of communism, but it's also advancing the gospel. It's also challenging men, especially men, to want to fight for what we've got, and not just enjoy it and comment on it like it's a football game every Sunday night. No, politics is the way that we maintain our individual sovereignty and liberty in this country. Right. And if more people weren't distracted, this never would have happened. Yeah. So that's, I'm hoping those hints kind of tell you what that one question is. But
no, absolutely. And I think our churches are a lot to blame. Like, we've kind of separated politics from the pulpit, and I kind of feel like they go hand in hand more than they would like to admit. And
that's a lot. This separation of church and state is a lot.
Yeah, well, and I think we've wussified the men in America to where it's like this passive.
Well, we've edited the Bible. Hey, we edited the Bible too. Me and Rob talked about this a lot when we were in Philly. I mean, they
took the unicorn out of it.
They toned down the Bible, and they took out all of the war books. All the books where people were fighting on behalf of God were removed from the Bible. And it's to make Christians weaker men. It's to make us more submissive. So, unfortunately, as crazy as it sounds, there's no way that a government, like and I guess it was back in the Greek times, ultimately that the Bible got dumbed down. But they did it intentionally so that their population would not uprise against the king or whoever was in charge at the time. So that's why they did it. I understand it. But we have to also understand that reading those missing books that were taken out of the Bible explains a lot about men fighting for God's purpose and God's will and what's good. And those things being taken out of the Bible, just like you said, Shane, the church is to blame in a lot of ways. And I find that usually you can go towards a church based on its pastor. And when the priest of this Catholic church said, just prior to the 2020 election, he goes, I walk the parking lot and I see stickers on cars that do not align with our Christian beliefs. So if you have something on your car that represents the party on the left that kills babies, that believes in homosexuality and all those things, you're in the wrong building. You are in the wrong building. And I was like, that's my priest right there. That's the guy. That's the guy I want. And he's an old Irish guy, and he's been to prison twice.
Okay, I like that. Sounds like sounds like our people right there, dude.
Yeah, he's one of my dude. He's just one. He's one of the guys, literally. Like, he's good. I mean, he's like 90 years old. Dude's old, man, but he's seen a lot. He's actually from over there during the potato famine and all that stuff. I mean, he's old school.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining the inaugural edition of Chestnut Checkers. But I don't know.
Stormed an inauguration now. Look at that.
There you go. That's right.
Yeah.
You guys got any closing remarks? You guys are. I'm going to open it up to you guys. Like, if you want to say something before we go.
Kelly, go for it, brother.
No, I just appreciate you having us on, man. It was, some of the best, worst times of my life were spent with you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And as bad as it all is, I mean, it's a situation where I'm so happy to be home, but I'm so glad we can all stay in touch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rob.
Well, I will say that I tried to explain it to a couple of guys that we had done time with that weren't in the military. I tried to explain that, hey, man, this is exactly what it feels like to have a platoon that you have exclusively suffered side by side with, who know that exclusive kind of pain and loss and betrayal. And there's a reason why you guys wear a uniform. It isn't just to identify whether or not you're an American soldier. It's also to signify we're capable of this kind of pressure and we can survive it as a team. There's a reason why we signify different units, like, oh, wow, that unit is capable of taking that hill. And so we're a part of a Patriot platoon now. And I was explaining it to Rachel Powell yesterday. We were in a radio show, and I said, there's a very small fraternity of men and women who know what it's like to be a political prisoner. And the day is going to come and go, just like the World War II veterans, where there are no more World War II veterans anymore. There's going to be a day where there are no more January 6th political prisoners. But until that day comes, we have to stay together. We have to keep that fire alive so that something like January 6th never happens again. I will say that, I never would have made it had it not been for God walking beside me the entire time, just like the Footprints poem that Kelly and I really studied and prayed about, but also wept about too. We recognize that, when we look at, the footprints in the sand and we only recognize that there's only one set of footprints, we want to get worrisome and cry out to God and say, how could you leave me in the times that are so painful and tragic and devastating? But, our good Father says, when you look down and you see only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. And so we are convinced that not only we being carried, but we're being sanctified as well by this experience. It was an honor to be sanctified side by side with you gentlemen. Absolutely. And as long as God gets the glory, we make the argument that you can't make America great again without making America God's America. And so if that is our lasting legacy, if people can listen to our words and say, you know what, I am going to trust God like those men did, that to me is mission accomplished. And so I hope that that's the case. And I appreciate, Shane, that you're dedicating this show to that goal and having us on for your maiden voyage. It's an honor, man. And thank you for promoting the book. It was a labor of love that Kelly and I did together. And I hope that you and the rest of your audience enjoys it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And don't forget, next weekend, you got to come down here. We got that big old book signing.
I know.
Okay. That's
going to take us like 4 hours to sign them all.
Oh, man.
At least 4 hours.
I'm going to have carpal tunnel by the time it's over with.
But Meggs already has it, so he's so old anyways. But
yeah.
I will say, it was, I always say that it was an honor to suffer alongside you, man. And you guys are my brothers for life. I will say, everybody check out the book one more time. It's One Question Remains, Your Move by Kelly Meggs and Robert Morss. I will say, America, please pay attention because we need to be playing chess, not checkers. Thank you guys for checking out the show. See you next time.
God bless you, brother.
All right, boys. We'll see you later.